Hi everyone, Joe March with the Grand Infinity here, and today I'm going to introduce a new segment that I'm hoping to add to the channel. The idea is that I'd like to talk with other people practicing magic just about their ideas, their thoughts, types of things that they know that maybe I don't know, that sort of thing. Kind of just a one-on-one, casual conversation sort of thing. And unlike before, where this has been interviews to introduce you to other people's channels, I'm interested in talking more specifically to you, the viewers, who have been practicing and have your own stories to share. So this is going to be the first of those. I'm going to be talking with Eva, and give it a listen, see if you like it, and see if you'd be interested in doing this same sort of thing with me. If you're interested in being on the channel with me in this same capacity, then just reach out to me in either my Facebook, my Twitter, or my Instagram. Those links will be down in the description box below. Thank you, and enjoy. Hi, Eva. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Eva. I live in Europe and I've been a practitioner of magic for about 5 years, but I've studied the occult for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I understand from us talking outside of this call that you are someone who does this a little differently than most people. You don't exactly follow sort of the witchy Wiccan tradition, and you also don't follow the ceremonial tradition. You kind of do everything more in a natural sort of mental state.
I do. I studied the witchy stuff and I studied the ceremonial stuff,
Hmm.
but because I am very talented in meditation and trance, I pretty much came to the conclusion that I don't need that. And I don't own any ritual tools apart from the ones that I was given. And I don't really, I do my daily rituals,
Hmm.
but I don't really do any rituals, any spell casting
Right.
as in ritual form.
Yeah, I find that particularly interesting because of what's been going on with me
Yes.
since the summer and that type of time frame where I've been moving more and more away from doing actual rituals for spells and things have been happening more naturally for me. And I'm kind of still coming to grips with understanding exactly what's going on. But here, that's kind of how you've been doing it all along. So that's very
Yes.
interesting to me.
Yes, and I was led to the books and the knowledge by
Hmm.
my intuition. So basically, I was just sitting in front of my computer watching YouTube, and an occultist popped up, and it did never before. Also, when I came to the Kabbalah, it just popped up on my computer as never before,
Hmm.
and so I just had the feeling that I should look into that, and I did.
Yeah.
But it took me some time before I practiced my first daily ritual, like the LBRP or something like that.
Hmm.
That I was spending half a year thinking about it. And
Yeah.
th- it's funny because I watched Freda X's video
Hmm.
just tonight, and the thank you video, and he was telling about that voice in his head nagging him to do it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
experienced just the same thing, and it just was nagging me to do it and nagging me to do it, and it took me half a year, and then I just did it, and
Yeah.
I've done it ever since.
Yeah, and I'm completely familiar with that feeling. I think
And
any
you
of
also
us
know the
who do this
voice
a
in
while are,
your head.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because everything is the same for people. We just talked about that yesterday. It's
Mhm.
just the feeling and the yeah, the senses you get. It's all the same for people. There's not much difference, I guess.
Right.
It's just words they use.
Yeah, we get hung up a lot of times on the methodology or on what we think it actually means, why it's happening. But when you get down to the experiential side of it, what it feels like, that seems to be the same for everybody.
I guess so, yes. I guess so. And it's
So,
mind blowing.
yeah. So we were talking yesterday about meditation a little bit,
Yes.
uh, and and one of the things I thought was really cool was you were talking about how you've come to be able to stay in this meditative state throughout a large portion of the day, which is something that I think I told you yesterday. I've started experiencing, but only recently. It used to be I had to get into my rituals for the day and actually do the hardcore meditation where you're sitting there doing breathing, trying to feel it, get into that state, and then when you come out of it, you're kind of out of it for the rest of the day. And on occasion, I could get into it fast if I just needed to. But this year, through all the changes that have been happening in my life, I'm starting to find I can just enter that state in these quiet moments. And I think that's what you're talking about. But it sounds like you you're a lot further along than me in that. So
I'm not really further along, but I think it's got something to do with that gratitude thing we talked about yesterday, but we're coming to that later on. I heard about meditation when I was like 16 years old, and I didn't know what it is. I had huge respect for it, but only when I started reading the occultist books, I realized that meditation simply means not thinking. And as soon as I read that sentence, I knew that I was doing that all along, because I don't think usually. When I'm talking now, the words that leave my mouth, I hear them for the first time. I don't hear them in my head. And
right.
so that's the meditative state, I guess. And that's the reason why I can so easily switch into trance. And I do that almost like 5 to 10 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I can easily get out. But there's, after we made the connection to each other, I have experienced such a growth and such weird things. I told you.
Yeah.
And my senses got so strong over the last 2 weeks that I even had to experience them, and I had to accept them. And as soon as I accepted them, they got so much stronger, so much stronger. But it's all about not thinking. And when you don't think, then the whole your intuition just takes over, and you're almost like, I don't want to call it like being a robot or something, but it's kind of, you can experience like the forces that act around you,
Yeah,
and the
there's a
that act.
lot of, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on,
Oh,
please.
there's a lot of different words I've heard for it. And
Yeah,
and at first I didn't know, when I was studying all this originally, I didn't know these all meant the same thing. But some people will say they're in the flow, or a flow
yeah,
state, and that's kind of the same thing. Some people will say they drop mind. Some people will say you don't think. Some people will say you're in the moment. All these things mean the same thing, but it's because we don't really have a word for that feeling, unless you've experienced it. But what I find helps, and that's why I like conversations like this, is maybe someone out there who has already experienced it and thinks they haven't can hear any one of these words and go, "Oh, wait a minute," and then realize what it is. Because I feel like for me, the reason that I hadn't been able to do this without as much work before is because I was guarded. I was kind of protecting myself from the stuff that had happened in my past and things like that. So I was overthinking a lot as a protection mechanism, and I had to come to accept myself and my past and no longer feel at threat, if that makes sense,
yeah,
in
it
order
does.
to just trust that in the moment I'll do what I need to do and I don't have to have everything pre-planned. And when I did that, a lot of this thinking just kind of dropped away. And it isn't really like the thinking you do to make a decision, it's the overthinking of like
Yeah.
what's going to happen later, what's happened in the past, whatever. And as that dropped away and I learned to just trust myself in the moment, now I'm having these moments throughout the day, and I think that is strongly related.
And I think they're going to get stronger for you.
Yeah, the more I trust my intuition and go with, just being who I feel like I need to be at every given time, it seems like it happens more and more. It's almost like I wouldn't say that it'll ever happen all day long, the whole day, because there are things that pull you out. Stressful situations will pull you right out of that state.
Yes, yes, of course.
But anytime you're not in a situation where you need to be 100% focused, and that's not even a good way to explain it, because when you're in the flow, you can be focused. But anything that pulls you out because there's an obstacle suddenly in front of you is pretty much what will stop you. And we come across obstacles every day.
Yeah, I think you're right. Stress is the biggest killer for everything.
Hmm.
So I've experienced stress making me think. I've experienced that recently,
Hmm.
and um, I know now better how the thought cycle works, because I don't really know the thought cycle, and I experienced now how hard it is to break out, and it takes me some strength
Hmm.
to break out and go back into the meditative
Yeah,
state. It
yeah.
works. me. It works for me easily, but I know how hard it is for people. I know how hard it is for people, and they have
Yeah.
to train and train and train. I know that.
Mhm. You have to kind of overcome yourself, is what I think it is.
Hmm.
Because an example that happened to me very recently was just something with work came up where I was going to have to do a lot of work creating a report, and I didn't feel like doing it. And so the instant that this thing that I had to do in the future came up, I have felt like this resistance within, you're trying to figure out either how to get around it or how you're thinking about what you're going
Yeah,
to have to do for it, and like all of this thinking that isn't actually working on the actual thing. It's just kind of thinking around it for some reason. And when I stop thinking about what I have to do later, or stop thinking about is there a way to circumvent this and just accept, okay, I've got to do this report, and I sit down and put my hands on the keyboard and start doing research, I go right back into the flow state. It's as much as I was resisting it before, doing the report is fine. I can stay in flow during that too, and it'll even come out better doing that. It's just that initial resisting point that seems to pull you right out.
I know the resisting point very well, and I
Hmm.
think, yeah, it's hard to overcome it. But the key to that, I think, is just to give in,
Yeah.
because acceptance plays such a big role in everything we do.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you have learned that, then it's easier to go back into the meditative state.
I think we're meant to kind of be pulled out so that we can ask the question, are we going to do this? So, you get this momentary thing where it's like, hey, let me pull all their attention to this question of, are we going to take this choice or not? Which way are we going to go? And what you're probably meant to do naturally is just make a decision and then go back in the flow state, accepting that decision. But we
Yeah,
agonize over it, and that's what keeps us in that
yeah,
in that
yeah.
stress. Yeah,
I don't do that because every time as I make a decision, I have to make a decision. I don't think about it. I just know it. It just appears.
that's a good way
And
to do it. I found
that's the
anytime I
beauty.
have that happen, things just work out the way they need to.
They do. They work out all the time. Also, you get to know things. You get to know things. You get to know to say the right things to the right people. You get to know their feelings, like
Hmm.
be more of an empath, I guess.
Hmm.
Also, you get more senses, like that those words for I don't really like them, but clear audience,
Hmm.
clairvoyance, and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
you have
Yeah,
those what I think Oprah calls an aha moment. You have those eureka moments, or just a bunch of different words for it.
epiphanies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
epiphanies.
yeah, right,
Hmm.
right. It's a great thing. Also, you can hear entities clear as day, as if there were people
Yeah.
talking to you.
And that is the other thing that I'm getting used to now. I haven't really done any videos talking about that so much, but there are people who I'm sure have wondered why I'm not doing more of the like get to know deities, get to know a demon and stuff like that I was doing before. Well, in my old methodology, I had to look something up and then try to reach out to it. Now, feel like things are just coming to me when they want to talk to me, and it's a different
Yes.
experience. I'm not drawn toward looking for something else now. I feel like it's almost more of a, hey, I need help with this, and then whatever should come comes. Or I don't even realize I need help with something, and something just shows up and starts giving me information. So it's weird to me because that's not how I used to do it, and I'm still questioning it because that's how I am. But I know I'll eventually just accept it, and it'll be the norm.
I think you will accept it because I can tell you from my stance, I never did an evocation ritual. I never did, but I I
Hmm.
talked to many entities and they all came to me. They all came to me and I at first, well, that happened to me when I was 16 years old even and I didn't realize.
Hmm.
And now I only see what I have done. But
Yeah.
if you it's all about I those entities that come to me, they always look into my heart and look into my soul. They know exactly who I am.
Hmm.
And some have told me that they've been sent,
Hmm.
and some just came. And
Yeah.
once, just some, I don't know how I made that connection. It just happened, but I now see them clear as day. I hear them clear as day. I can smell them. It just, everything is so real. Everything is
Hmm.
really much stronger.
Yeah, I think the more you accept what's going on and the less you question it, the more that it becomes real. I know for a lot of people that sounds dangerous because people worry about having their mind slip away or going crazy because that's what it sounds like is happening,
Mhm.
if you haven't gone through kind of a slow progression toward it. And for me, it's been a slow progression where, it's been years of trying and having little bits. First, you can kind of feel something, later, you can kind of see something, then it's just in your mind, then it starts to seem a little more crazy. It just, but over years of time. So I've been eased into it. And even then, you saw in March in my videos, I had that moment where I was like, oh my God, because it still hits you. But it
It does.
I got the pleasure, I guess you call it, of easing into it, and I think that's why a lot of people get annoyed when they do evocation and things because they think they can do an evocation and have it come to that full experience of the first time, and that's just not how it works for us. Now, for you, it might have been different because you didn't come through that way, that path.
No, I didn't, but I know all the stories, and I guess it's all about, I don't experience doubt too much
Hmm.
because I don't get that in my brain, and I think doubt is something that can kill it just like stress or anything else.
Right.
And doubting and questioning what's happening to you, I guess can just stop it. And I think that's the reason why, like, all the beginners have troubles because they're not used to meditation yet,
Yeah.
and they're not used to trance yet, and they don't even know how that feels and what's happening. And then if they start questioning, the channels just close, and there's a full stop to everything, and the entities are still there, but you
Yeah.
just
You're
can't.
blocking it is what
Yeah,
happens.
you're
Yeah.
blocking it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was doing for a long time myself. I think that with everything that had happened in my past, that I was blocking internally. Because I know you've seen my videos before where I've talked about my past. That I had kind of
Yeah.
built a shield up around myself to protect myself, mentally in some way from what I perceived, I guess, as danger, and that I had to work through that. And magic in this process helped me to pierce through that shield and be able to achieve these connections and things because it gave me a time when I could say, all right, I'm gonna uh, suspend disbelief while I'm doing this ritual, and see that was the magic, the real magic that I wasn't realizing is that what I was doing was getting my mind used to this idea that I can kind of go in and out of these different perspectives, and eventually that's carried on to something that can happen all the time. But it had to start with me saying, I'm going to do it right now for this little amount of time. And then my brain goes, okay, I'm not going to shield you and protect you. Like my subconscious is like, okay, fine, we're safe, we're doing it for a little bit. And then you ease it out bigger and bigger. And that's just because of my own past that I think I needed that. And so I'm starting to believe, and I may be wrong, but I'm starting to believe that we all kind of naturally have these abilities, but a lot of us have issues in our past that cause us to block them out. And that magic and things like that are more of a pathway to get back to them, and that perhaps in the long run, if you can get over those issues, you won't need the rituals and the steps and the tools anymore. It'll become a natural part of life. But if you're not having it as a natural part of life now, then you need a process to get there.
I completely agree with you. I don't think you're wrong on that because there's people already having those transcendental senses
Hmm.
without practicing magic, and
Right.
it's been a thing. And I think that every one of us has their unique paths. And I think that we were born with the right to practice magic because it's a natural thing. It's how our brains can work.
Hmm.
They just can, but we don't practice it,
Yeah.
and we don't understand it. And I think the whole field of psychology is pretty much just confusing people. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. And
Because
and
they don't
it's
understand themselves, and neurology, the brain studies, they don't understand what they're doing. Physicians don't understand what they're doing. So basically, there's just a big confusion created by science and also religion, and if he could bring all those things together, because I could, that was my whole interest in life, is to find the bridge between religion and magic, because I studied them for
Yeah.
years, both of them. And then I finally found magic, and I said to myself, wow, I knew it all along, that there is a connection and there's a bridge and there is something, and now I've got it. But
Yeah.
that the beauty of magic and occultism is that you can always find something new and find something interesting, and you can always find a deep mystery. It's beautiful.
Right. Yeah, I think that the scientific method itself is a genius method for being able to determine what is in the physical world, like how it works and things like that. And that people who follow that method are fine. What happens is when somebody believes that pre-existing scientific findings explain the entire world. That's not the same thing
Yeah.
as to believe in the scientific method. Believing that science is valuable is great. I agree. Believing that there's this kind of known, that we already know, that we have a real, that our view of reality within the scientific model is 100% accurate, is almost counter to the scientific method. So I feel like we got some people who have latched onto science as the answer to everything, and they don't like the idea that some stuff it can't be explained, and so they
Yeah,
shun all of it.
they're scared.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And then in religion, you have the same thing. Religion,
Yeah.
when it's used correctly to try to help you unlock kind of your inner self, find, meaning, emotional meaning, I would say, as opposed to logical meaning in the things around you, that's great, because we need to do that. We need to connect both logically and emotionally in order to function as complete people. But people will try to, again, pile it in as it knows everything already. Everything can be answered by this one box, and it can't. And it's when you do that you run into fundamentalism and stuff like that. So it's almost a desire for there to be a simple answer that's causing people stress.
I guess so, yeah. I guess so.
But the real answer is even simpler, which is
Yeah, but we're the
accept
crazy
accept
people.
that you don't know.
Yeah, but we're the crazy people to society.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
But if you can see them both in that way, you can get value out of both science and religion really easily. It's people who get pulled too heavily into it and want it to be something it's not. I think the same thing can happen with magic.
Yeah.
I think if you use it as a method in order to help you get into states, and then you can use that to determine whatever you want about reality, then you're doing your own thing, and that's good. But if you get too into this ritual has to work this way, and this person said this, but that person said that, so which one is right, and you go down that road, you're falling into that same category as the others, where you're trying to have an explanation that can be written down on paper that explains something that's an infinite creation. It's just
Mm.
it's like an exercise in folly.
I think the most important thing about magic and occultism is the great work. I told you yesterday,
Yeah.
and I think that's the thing. If you keep that motivation, then you will always stay sane.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced that. Because that was my main motivation,
Mhm.
apart from bridging science and religion.
Right.
So I think if you don't get out of focus,
Mhm.
then everything will be fine. But of course, there are examples of people who lost that focus, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And one of the things I think you and I had talked about yesterday, and we wanted to get into a little here, was about thankfulness and gratitude, which I think flows through all three of those as well, if you
Yeah, it
look
does.
for it the right way. So as a person involved in science, you can see some of the greatest scientists are extremely inquisitive because they want that connection to the universe. They're interested in kind of experiencing a knowledge. It's a hunger. But not in a negative way. It's a love for the physical world. It's a gratitude. But in religion too, when people pray and when they get results, it's always when they pray with thanks and gratitude and humbleness and things like that. And as I've talked about in some of my videos, when people work with entities or servitors or ancestors or anything, there's always a giving of gratitude. like a giving of this loving energy that seems to go along with it and coincide. And you had your own thoughts related to gratitude and thankfulness that I thought were really cool.
Well, my thoughts on gratitude. Um, let me begin the other way around. Okay,
Okay.
I am a very emotional being because I've got very much water in my chart,
Hmm.
and I experienced emotions my whole life, and I experienced the downside of them and the most upside of them. And I've came to the realization that the strongest emotion there is gratitude,
Hmm.
and it's even stronger than anger, and anger is such a strong emotion.
Hmm.
Love is such a strong emotion, but gratitude is just something else, because the other emotions tend to stay inside the body, and they tend to stay, like, they keep you occupied,
Hmm.
they keep the body occupied. But when you experience gratitude, you're not really thankful for yourself or anything. The gratitude leaves the body, and it goes somewhere else. You can direct it to anyone who you like. And
Hmm.
that's the reason why it's so much stronger. And if you go into the trance state, into like evocation, anything you do in ritual or not, if you go into it with that strong of emotion being gratitude, then will come so much easier, because you're already in that state, and that's the desired state, I guess.
Yeah, I love that explanation because, and prior to us talking yesterday, I'd never even thought about it from that perspective. I just knew that gratitude seemed to work. I'd never put together any reasoning for why. But when you think about it, just like you said, you're focusing gratitude on an outside source. You're never, I mean, you can be grateful to yourself, but that's a rare occasion. Usually you're grateful to something outside, or you just feel like kind of a radiating gratitude for life or nature or whatever it is that you happen to be thankful for. But it's always projected outward.
Yes.
And so it's like a natural emotional energy that you can project out. And we always talk about in magic that when you want something to come back, you have to first project out. So gratitude is probably the easiest energy, the easiest emotion to use if you want to send an intention out.
It is, but um getting experience in practicing gratitude takes a while, I
Yeah, that's
guess.
true. Yeah, that's true. I've been practicing it myself, and again, we talked about this yesterday. But when I first started in the occult, I was more in it for just trying to better my position, what I guess you might consider to be power or something like that, because it was more about making money, doing things I needed to do to get out of my current life situation and stuff like that. But as this whole process, this whole experience changed me, which anyone who does this and continues to practice it beyond trying it a few times will be changed by it. It
Yes.
it changed my perspective entirely. I didn't crave power. I didn't crave that sort of thing. I started to see a different way within the world, and that's why I've become the way I am. And part of that is from this practice of gratitude as well, because I started giving gratitude when doing evocations and things, but then later I started practicing the Hermetic tradition of giving gratitude to your food. You think about how many hands it had to pass through, think about the life that was given by the animal or by the plant or whatever. You kind of like give thanks to that food, which is also done in several religions. But instead of aiming it at a deity, you're just thankful for that food. And that practice will happen 3 times a day. If you force yourself to do that, you can start getting used to being thankful. In my meditation now, I do thanks to the air, fire, water, and earth. I do thanks to what I call the mother below and the father above, which to me is the earth itself and stars and space. Um, so I'm basically thanking the entire universe every time that I do a meditation now. And I find that this has caused naturally me to be more thankful to other people in my life and thankful in moments of quiet without having to think about doing it. All of this is natural now. It feels natural to be thankful. And that has just changed the entire way that I behave.
And also, you told me yesterday, and that is the funny thing, because you told me yesterday that since then, since you practice that gratitude, you get easier connection and
Yeah.
you feel easier, like it's easier for you to get into meditation and into trance.
Yes.
And I think that's not a coincidence because I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a two-part thing. One part was getting over that shieldedness I had up around myself from my past, which has only I've only gotten over that recently, and that's still something I work on, because obviously that's always going to be a work in progress. Part of it was that, so now I trust myself. So we need trust
Yeah.
in ourselves. And then the other part is the gratitude, which I had started practicing before, but now I really feel it. I like it's strong when I feel it. It invokes a feeling of joy in me to give
Mm.
gratitude. If that makes sense.
It does. It does.
It
It
didn't
feels.
it didn't when I first started. It felt like a chore, but that changed over time. And when I give gratitude now, sometimes I feel what I could only describe as an energy, even though I hate using that term, but some kind of an energy within, heating the body, filling the body, and spreading out, just like you said, kind of going outward.
Yeah.
And it's for me at first when that started, when I started to be able to feel that again, I had I think my friend Angel calls it paranormal acceptance anxiety or something like
Oh, I
that.
didn't say that. That's so funny. Uh, Good.
Yeah, so I was having trouble with that. But since then, I'm finding that if I'm in a moment of just where I don't have to do something, I almost automatically am entering a meditative state, which has thrown me because now I'm like, okay, well, I still do my daily meditation because I wanna stay disciplined, but I'm finding that I don't have to spend too much time doing that in the morning because later in the day it's going to happen anyway. I'm going to get pulled into it. And it's not like getting pulled into a daydream. I'm not off somewhere. I'm doing exactly what I have to do. I can be at work, I can be at home, I can be with loved ones, I can be in mid conversation, but somehow everything just aligns and I'm not worrying or thinking about the future or past or whatever. I'm just interacting in the moment. And it's an amazing thing. Everybody tries to, all these yogis and things try to tell you be in the
Mhm.
moment, but you can't focus on being in the moment. That's the opposite. Then you're thinking about something. It's like the hardest advice. So I would say maybe gratitude is a much better path
I
because
think
it's
it
something
can.
everybody can
Yeah,
do.
it can get people to realize a lot of things, and it can help people to with meditation definitely. Because as I told you, and as I have to say it again, because I know that people won't believe me. I don't think when I talk. I don't, and that makes me listen so much more. And when I meet new people, um, everyone I meet is very happy about meeting me. People love me. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. It's just because they sense that I'm fully there. I hear everything they say. I'm not occupied by my mind. I'm not occupied by anything else. And that's just being in the moment. And
Yeah.
life is so much richer when you are in the moment. I can't tell you enough. It's just yeah, it's rich, it's there,
Mhm.
it's real, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and interestingly enough, related to that, the whole reason we're having this conversation and the one we had yesterday was because you reached out on my channel and left
Yeah,
me a message saying that you thought it'd be a good idea because you noticed in my videos that I have it struggling a little bit. I don't no longer feel like I want to be in a teacher role because I think I've taught everything I knew about how I used to do things, and now I'm doing things a different way, and I'm not in a position to be ready to teach. And you could sense that in just the things I was talking about.
yeah,
But I still love this community, and I want to be connected to it, and I feel like there's something here for me. In fact, anytime I've contemplated getting rid of the channel or just ending it and not coming back but leaving it up, I always am drawn back to it. It's not for me at all because it's usually just work on my end, but it's something about it that I need to do, that there's a push, that there's a voice saying you still have to keep doing this, that that keeps me involved in it. But I was floundering to try to figure out what to do with the channel if I don't teach. Interviews with people who have other channels and stuff is cool, but there's only so many of those people, and it's a lot of work to put those together and things. And you had said one of the things you thought of was we should do videos like this where just the viewers who have watched me before talk to me, because a lot of my viewers are practitioners who've practiced for a while. And, not as a question and answer type thing, just as a like, hey, two people talking to each other so we can kind of validate each other's experiences, and that helps validate the people watching's experiences. And I loved that idea so much that I reached out, and that's how this whole thing came together. But you later told me, and I'm sorry, I'm stealing all the thunder here. You later told me that you just wrote that because you felt like that's what you needed to write. You didn't think about
Yeah.
writing it ahead of time. You didn't come up with what you were going to say. You just, in response to my video, said exactly how you saw me and the problem I had and what the solution was. And it was 100% on point with what I needed to hear. It was an idea I hadn't come up with that I was waiting to see. And that's how everything's been coming into my life too recently, is that whenever I'm going, well, this is an issue, what am I going to do about this? The answer just appears as it did in your comments. So we're kind of interacting within this weird synchronicity that I'm starting to grow to love in everything I see.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Yeah, and it's another example of you didn't have to think about what you were going to write before you wrote it, or during, or after.
I never have to think about anything.
Yeah,
And also that's the reason why I sense that. I sense it's even funny for me because I'm so used to sensing other people's emotional states, but I did not know that I could do that with you being in America and me being in Europe, and
right,
only me watching your videos, and I don't even know you, you know.
right. Yeah,
It's Yeah, because there's something invisible about us, on us, on our, I don't know, I don't like the word aura or something,
yeah,
but
right.
something like that exists and I can sense it.
Yeah.
And yeah. And also I thought, well, when I say I thought, I don't I don't really think, but that's just language. So please don't get things mixed up here. But I think it's a good thing that you've built that community and you've built it yourself. And now that it's there, maybe we can do something with it.
Yeah.
Maybe we all can do something with it. Because I know that you reached the point where you can't teach anymore.
Hmm.
And maybe it doesn't have to come to a full halt or a full stop. It just has to transform into
Right.
something else.
Right. And I absolutely love that idea. As soon as you had explained that to me, I was like, this is what I've been needing. Because this community needs to thrive, but it needs to thrive in a new way. And I hadn't realized that that's what it was. I was putting a lot of the burden on myself, but I didn't need it.
You don't need to, no.
Right.
And I also think that many practitioners would have something interesting to say if only they would try and just come out of the closet.
Yeah. And that's
Like,
why I like the idea of a place where, people know who I am, but the rest of the people who come on can be anonymous if they want to.
yeah.
You can have your name or a pseudonym, you can have a video chat or put up an image. I love that idea because then you're going to get the rich knowledge that only I'm usually seeing from private comments that I get sometimes, or from reading the comments in my Facebook feed and in my YouTube feed, where there's some people that I know from what they're saying that they are practitioners who practice longer than me. And they are saying, yeah, man, you got that right, but wait till this or that happens. And I'm like, these guys know more than I know, but they don't want to be in the public eye, which, is perfectly great. And in fact, that's the type of person I want to learn from more than anyone else.
I don't know why magic is kept such a secret, and people are being secretive about it, and people think it's all for themselves, because it's not, and the knowledge has been there, I guess, from the beginning, and you can come to the same conclusions without talking to anyone, without really reading a book. It just takes you longer, I guess, but I think we all got our special knowledge and special talents, and why not share them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's even kind of funny that it's called a cult once you start to understand what it really is. It's like you're understanding the natural way of things that people have forgotten. It's not really a secret, as the word
No.
would indicate. It's more of it's almost like we're keeping the secret from ourselves.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think it's part of the mystery, but I think, as in many fields, there has been some confusion about what the secret is, and I don't think it's, because that knowledge is so old. It's so old, and maybe there was a time where it has to be kept a secret, but I don't think it's anymore because. Yeah, I just recently watched your video, the end of an era,
Oh yeah.
where you talked about the shift, like if there's a shift happening,
Yeah.
and I also sense some kind of shift. I
Hmm.
also sense some kind of shift in my life, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe we just have to open up about it because
Yeah.
it's a natural thing.
Yeah, and that's what I think too. One more thing I wanted to talk about with you is you had talked about before that you're an artist and
Yes,
that you relate magic and art together. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
well, I am an artist as I am a magician for all my life. I am 32 years old, by the way, if someone wants to know. And I've had such problems with my art because I always kept pushing myself. I wanted to achieve hyper realism. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a very real art form.
Hmm.
It looks like a photography. And it took me years. It took me years to achieve that. And when I achieved it, I've reached my goal and I didn't know what to do next. And I had to contemplate and ask myself what I'm gonna do next. And then I knew that I have to find my own style because that's the goal for any artist to reach to become an artist because they have their own recognizable style.
Hmm.
And so I didn't know how to work on that. and and I was already, because I was in my trance state and in my meditative state, I was already pushing it out. I was already spell casting, but I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's spell casting because I think some entity heard me, and because one day I was sitting at home and I was writing I had to write a message down because it was repeating itself over and over in my head. It was not my own voice, so it's obviously been an entity.
Right.
And I've written that down, and I have not looked at it since 2 weeks ago. And that that point changed everything because I started to realize that I have to bring the two things together, mainly my meditative talents, my magical talents, if I can call that so, and my art. I had to bring them all together. And since then, everything changed. I now know how art works. And I now know it's not coming from ourselves. It's not, and that's an egotistical thing to think that you as the artist are the great genius behind it, and that's the point where artists will fail and will crumble and fall because it's not coming from them. It's coming from above. It's coming from, I don't know, the
It's
astral plane.
Yeah, you're sort of channeling the artwork.
Yes, and that's my art style. I'm just
Hmm.
channeling. It's the same thing when I talk. I don't know which words leave my mouth, and the same thing when I take the pen and paper or sit to the canvas. I don't know what's happening. I just watch the image unfold as I move my hands, and the only thing I have to think about is coloring because that's my personal. I don't know. It's a big thing for me. Colors. I love them, and yeah, that's the only point where I start to get myself a bit more into the image. But the rest is basically channeled.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening, and that's my art style now, and that opened me up to the fact that it's not coming from us. It's not, and
Right.
I think it's the same thing for magicians, and it's the same thing for every other art form, as like music
Mhm.
and acting and writing. If
Yeah.
you get too caught up in your ego and too, how can I say that? Yeah, get too egotistical and put it all on yourself,
Hmm.
then you get blocks, and then you get yeah, you will experience um hard times.
Right.
But if you are open to the idea that it's not coming from you, that's a huge relief, because you don't have to say, "Oh, I don't know what to paint today. I don't know what to write. I'm all of out of ideas," because you're not all of out of ideas, because it's not coming from you.
Hmm.
And that's the same thing for magicians, because we just use, I know you hate the word energy, I don't really know why. We just use that, we just use it
Yeah.
and channel it and do something with it. And yes, our subconscious takes a huge part, but also the outside forces and energies, they just take a huge part. And I think the subconscious is a force or energy or something itself. It's like Freda X always says, it's more like the a mediator
Yeah.
between the astral plane and our conscious.
Yeah.
I guess he's right. I don't know.
Hmm.
All I know that it works.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what you think about it, because you're a writer yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of what I've worked on in the past, even though I'm not, someone who's got published works out there and things like that, that process actually came before, I was doing occult research, but before I became involved in magic and things like that. And when I go back and read my old stuff, even though I look at it as kind of amateurish now and whatever, if someone else was reading it, I can see ideas in that writing, that stuff that I only actually understand now, and that blows my mind. Like things the characters were talking about are things that I actually understand now, fundamentally within the occult and knowledge like that I did not know back then. And somehow, while writing that story, while in the flow of writing, that stuff was all already there. So, I agree it has to come from somewhere else because I didn't know
Yeah.
that stuff back then.
Also, I don't think that our conception of time is really the truth. It's
Hmm.
it's also a confused thing by mankind, because I have experienced that too. That something rooted way back, like when I was 16, and I didn't see it, but it was
Yeah.
already there. And so I know what you mean, and I also know what you mean when you say you find that stuff childish, because of course you are, because you have grown.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I look at it and
Yeah,
I go, okay, parts of this I'm looking at like, wow, that's really mind blowing and cool. And other parts I'm like, oh man, I wouldn't want to be necessarily even affiliated to this particular story now, like because of how much I've changed. So I can imagine that for a published author, they must have within their queue of works things that they are that fans love that they're embarrassed of, and it's probably just because they no longer resonate with that work. And
yeah,
I kind of
but
get
that's
that.
normal. That's completely normal. I know, I've experienced that too. I know authors who said that, and painters who said that, and musicians who said it.
Yeah.
I think it's because, yeah, of growing. It's a natural thing. And I think it's good. You can be thankful that you find it childish, because it's a sign that yeah,
Yeah.
you're not in that state any longer.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's a funny thing. I really love magic because of that.
Hmm.
It's always new and always different and always something to learn. Don't you think?
Yes, definitely. And I think this
So
has been a really good conversation, but that's
I
a
think
good place to stop for now. We might even do a conversation again in the future if you're up for that.
I'm up for that, yes.
Cool.
If
Uh,
people like
yeah.
it.
And you know, like we had said before, if other people want to do the same thing, I'm open to that too. They can reach out to me via my various forms of media that'll be in the description. And thank you for
Yes,
this
sure.
idea and also for being the first one to do this with me.
I'm glad to be the first one. I hope there will be many after me. I hope people will share their minds and their experiences because I'm curious to learn new things.
Mhm.
I'm curious to hear all the others because I'm a single practitioner and
Yeah.
it gets lonely sometimes, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so let's just be a community about it, huh?
Hmm. Yeah, perfect. Well, until next time.
Safe travels.